Hey, Instagram, it's Melissa, and guess what? It's Tuesday, and we know with Tuesday that means it's Tuesday Tips Live. Ta-da! And today I'm especially excited. I always feel like there's a really, hello, Give a Shirt Chicago. I'm going to wave at Give a Shirt Chicago, and I'm going to ask Give a Shirt Chicago to join us. That's a little clue to who our guest is today. Our guest today is the founder of Give a Shirt, Scott Marvel, who is he's also the president of Daily Planet Productions, a production company here in Chicago, and he is going to be joining us here. He's requested to join, and I would love him. Here comes that moment where Scott is joining. Dun 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 dun.
Hey,
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm excellent. How are you?
I'm excellent as well, Scott Marvel from Daily Planet and Give a Shirt. Um, hey, first of all, I have to notice I'm just going to call this out. I'm really happy that you painted your walls to match the new color hair that I've got at the bottom here.
We
I don't
did, yeah.
I don't know if you can tell. I'm trying to, Mia might be happy, your daughter Mia might be happy to know that I'm, pulling, it's kind of Billie Eilish-esque, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's nice. And it changes when you change your hair color, our walls automatically change. We have
That's
it's a
right.
special paint. It's amazing.
It's amazing.
So be careful what
Oh,
you choose.
I'll be very careful. I'll make sure that it's a calming color, right? I don't
Yeah,
want I don't want Rizzo to get all wound up over an orange choice or something.
yeah,
Um, well, Scott, thank you for taking some time to chat with me today about creative teams, because you are one of those people that has led creative teams for a long time, even before you were president of Daily Planet. As a film editor, you're wrangling and leading a creative team through an editorial process. You've been leading teams your whole career.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Yes. I don't think, we talked about it a bit yesterday. I don't think about it much. So we'll have to unpack what that actually means.
We will.
Yeah.
We're going to unpack it, because one of the things that I really like to do is sort of take this. Some people have a certain vibe to them, and it's why people are attracted to them as leaders. And so then it's sometimes hard to quantify what those qualities are or what those behaviors are. And so, yeah, so we'll unpack some things. But one of the things that I wanted to note is creative teams during this time in the world. It feels like there's more to it than just your average everyday leadership. And wait, hold the thought, because I'm going to give you some time to think for a minute. I also want to point out that if people have questions while we're talking, please feel free to jot questions or comments into the chat. And even if you're watching this Instagram after it's live, Scott and I, either of us, can come back and address your questions. So feel free to comment and ask questions.
I
So
can't remember what we decided. Are we offering house calls too?
Yeah, house calls and bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, weddings, funerals,
Yeah,
life celebrations.
especially funerals.
Yeah, yep. That's an inside joke between Scott and I, because we like to talk about death sometimes. Um,
Yeah.
Anyhow, back to life, back to reality. So, creative teams, what have you noticed in the past 18 months as things that may have shifted for you in terms of how you approach leading the team, whether it's the Daily Planet team or the Give a Shirt team?
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, there's a lot of Zoom calls. There's a lot of calls like this where you're talking on the phone. And I didn't know what was going to happen. I remember that beginning of the pandemic and Matthew, one of our editors, saying, like, we've got to have a plan. I said, well, if this actually goes through as a full pandemic, we'll figure something out. He said, we should figure it out now. And then within days, we were all at home. We all had what we needed, and there were almost no hiccups. Um, but I think all of that groundwork was laid ahead of time, because if you deal with people that you can trust to just get their job done, and if that's always been your focus, it's more, luckily in our field, it's more project based, that like the work has to be good and the work has to get done in time. I don't care when you do it. That's kind of easy, you know. It
Yeah.
didn't seem like there was even a bump in the road. I absolutely trust everyone to just get their work done, or else,
Right.
you know.
Or else you'll see
Yeah,
the evil twin of Scott.
yeah. I mean, everyone has their own internal um, manager or whatever that's pushing them to get it done well and get it done on time. So I don't care if they spend 4 hours in the afternoon taking a nap or walking the dog or going mini golfing. I don't, as long as when it's needed, when we need to see something, when the client needs to see something, it's there and it's great whenever, you know. And I think a
Whenever.
lot of bigger companies are having that problem now. They're trying to get people back to work, and everyone's saying, you know, some people want to go, some people don't want to go, but kind of the consensus I've heard, and I've been asking a lot of people, is like, we're doing great work at home. Why do I want to spend an hour on the Kennedy? You know, can I have some choices here? So, you know, we've gone in when we've needed to with clients, but it hasn't been, it really wasn't, there was never a thought of mine like, shoot, what are we going to do now? You know, it just was like, it took minutes to make a plan and figure out what to do. There were a couple times where it's like, okay, if a client wants to join us remotely, what sort of software do we use for that? You know, so there was some research there, but as far as workflow, it was great. And like the creativity thing and being in the same room, you miss a little bit of that, of course. But we can talk on the phone, we can be here, we can ping pong stuff back and forth on the computer.
Yeah.
Speaking of
Okay,
ping pong,
so
we do miss the ping pong table.
the ping pong table
Yeah.
is something to be missed for sure.
Yeah.
It's definitely not the same as trying to do that remote. Well, let's unpack that for a moment. So we already talked about trust. So trust is a huge element. You talked about clear deadlines, and it also sounds like clear client asks,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So you've got a lot of clarity of communication. It's project based. So all of these things are small structures that hold the team together. But the fascia of it, like what's really holding everybody together, is this trust. And one thing that you mentioned yesterday that we were talking about, you know, it was a while back when one of your editors decided to, you know, she was moving with her husband because of his job, and she wanted to stay connected to the company, and so that happened years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. 6, 5.
Six, right.
Yeah.
So you already had to start working out those workflows and those processes back then.
Yeah. Yeah. And at first it was a lot of communication, just like, you know, what's going on, how's it going, and then it's just like, just tell me when you have something for me to look at, you know.
Right.
We kind of overdid it there. So you're right. Like we had some test subjects there, because it's like, why should everyone be confined to being here in the office? We were kind of working all of that out pre-COVID, knowing that COVID was going to happen in a couple of years. um, but I think there are some jobs where people feel like they have to micromanage. Maybe that's the nature of the job. They have to see the person doing the work. Boy, that would not be fun.
No.
So it was easy for us. And you're right, though. We had two people. One went to Baltimore, one went to LA, and we talked a lot about it. Like, boy, how's this going to work? Like, we were ping ponging ideas off each other, and like, and you still communicate. You're just not in the same room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what did you notice? Because you've brought on new team members since, you know, working remotely, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious how it goes with either new members to your team, and or if you've got new clients that you don't necessarily have a rapport and trust built up with yet.
Yeah. You know, I've been thinking a lot lately about when I started out as an editor, we were doing a lot of like animatics, test commercials, and it was a time when clients would come in for full days, 3 or 4 clients. 9 o'clock they'd come in, 6 o'clock they'd leave. They'd have a snack in the morning. They'd have a lunch brought to them. It was a very boutique thing, but you had the time in between all of that stuff and them watching an edit to turn around and talk to them. You know, just like at a color session or whatever. There's a lot of chatter and you get to know people. And as far as revisions or moving stuff around, it's less like a sandwich order than it is like this collaborative thing, you know. And you just have to kind of roll with that. And that's one thing I miss a lot, like just being able to spend time with people, spend time with clients, get to know them. Because I'm interested in everything. I'm interested in what people ate for lunch, ate for dinner, you know, what car they drove. My car's breaking down, so I'm looking for a new car. By the way, if anyone's got a car, let us know.
Mazdas, I'm telling you that I'm telling you I'm in love with my Mazda.
Yeah, yeah. Do they
you
have
know that, my Maserati.
Yeah. Do they have one big enough for Scott Marvel? I'd have to ride on top of yours, like Magilla Gorilla, maybe.
We could do a test drive. We can work this out.
Okay. Cool.
But also, while we're talking here, just to provide a little bit of context for folks, in the production world and the post-production world, there is a lot of time spent together with clients, whether you're on a set, whether you're in an edit session, whether you're doing special effects or color, or in an audio booth, in an audio room. So there is as much downtime, actually probably the ratio of downtime to operating time is more downtime, right? But that downtime allows you to build those relationships of steady clients and build a business.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing about the changes that was already kind of happening before the pandemic, because people weren't in the same offices, you know, or they're working on several projects. So to get every decision maker in the room, at least from the creative team, was getting a little harder anyway. So that the communication there was hard, because everyone would watch something on their computer or on their phone and then give their tweaks, you know, their revisions, and then you get this list of stuff. And when they're in the room, the conversation might be, boy, I wanted that line to be more impactful, and I'm not sure why it isn't. And then you try stuff collaboratively. But when it's done by everyone separately, it might be, you know, 3 of us thought that we should trim 10 frames from the front of that line or whatever, you know. It's like,
right. Yeah, and then it takes out that conversation part. I see Melissa Barany is watching. Melissa, if you wanted to join in the conversation, you can totally join. I can zap you in here and you can suddenly magically appear with Scott and I. I believe that we can do that. I believe we have the power to do that. If not, I'm also curious from, you know, Melissa Barany is a friend of both of ours now, but it started off as a client. Right? Melissa was one of our clients. And one of the things that I'm curious about is sort of the notion of apprenticeship, creative apprenticeship in a process that would happen when you were in the same room with people. So whether it's an associate producer or a new copywriter or a new art director, they would learn things being in the room. And so I'm curious what you're noticing, you know, Melissa, if you're still on, what you're noticing, and Scott, what you're noticing about how those ideas develop when it's remote.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a mentorship thing that does happen. All the little things that, you know, it's like slowing down. You're in a room for 8 hours with someone, as opposed to just waiting to see a cut and then someone quickly making changes. Just all that in between, and sometimes the boredom of just sitting in the back of a room waiting for someone to make an edit. You know, it's all that time that just goes away. When you're sitting there, you learn. And when I was starting in the business, and it's the thing I see with interns a lot, because we're pretty relaxed, or we look relaxed at Daily Planet.
Look what we did through magic.
I like that it made my head smaller.
I have to mute this meeting, though, that I'm actually supposed to be on virtually. I agree. I think there's so much like that you don't overhear, whether it's you're sitting in an edit or you're in the office and you have sort of, I think for younger producers, creatives, I think there's a lot missing from just like sitting next to someone in their desk and overhearing their conversations and just learning through osmosis. And then you sort of think about, oh, I noticed you were blah, 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 But, so I feel like there's a lot more conversations that have to be had over email or whatever that like could just be like a 5-minute, um, run by someone's desk or, hey, and especially like producers getting things from creatives. And then I feel a big lack in like creatives not being able to be in the room with editors and other artists.
Yeah. How do you create that cohesive, that cohesion that typically happens, Scott, from your end, and Melissa from your end?
Yeah, it's tough now that we're all separate, but there is, what I was trying to say before is there's a lot of soft skills that can only be learned by watching, and the attitude, the thing that interns don't get and young people don't get. They might know how to use Adobe Premiere or whatever, but they don't necessarily know all the ways to deal with a request, when to ignore something, or sometimes people don't necessarily say exactly what they mean, even though we're in the communication business. It's like, no, they're saying this. They say they want something that looks like this music video, but what they're really saying is this. There's all of that stuff, all the little things that get lost.
Very true. I try to I think what's really been missing when you have these remote sessions is any kind of congeniality, like to try to not just like you're on the Zoom and it's like, hey, okay, so this is what we're doing. Like at least to just like, sorry, my dog's barking, or hey, or what did you guys do this weekend or something? Because I feel like what you miss in the room, when you're not in the room is like who these people are that you're creating with. Like, so I try, though it does just on any of these many, many virtual sessions, to at least take a couple minutes to just connect, that maybe not about the work, because that's so much of what we all love about what we do, is just being together with different kinds of people,
Yeah. Well, to Scott's point, like we're in it's an industry, both of you working in the advertising industry, it's a human-centered industry. So to bring the humanity to the process seems to be key to creating good work also.
Right. And then also trying to follow up with either like interns or younger creatives or producers, or even not younger creatives, because it is harder to sort of have just a natural dialogue over Zoom, to just say, hey, to your point, Scott, is that really what you wanted? Or did you really want to look at it a different way? Or like kind of there's sometimes a little more follow-up that has to happen after a session, where everybody's like having to like raise their hand or unmute themselves or whatever.
Yeah. Have you come up with any kind of hacks for that, Melissa? It almost reminds me of like when people are on the record or off the record. Like, hey, off the record, you can actually tell me what you really.
Well, for shoots specifically, I don't know if I've done it for edit. Well, yes, I have for voiceover record sessions. We like set up a different chat, like a Google chat or a different platform, because, and just with your creatives can say, hey, I want to see it this way, or blah, 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 blah. That helps a little. It's very unwieldy, especially for producers that are managing it, but sometimes it might give a little more open forum that they might feel more comfortable in it than like the group session or the shoot.
Yeah, it's been tough on shoots, like when we do when the clients are remote and the clients are starting to show up for shoots, but the director has to make sure to check in at the beginning, kind of the beginning of every scene, because you're watching a shoot and sometimes it looks like, what are they even doing? There's so much downtime of setting up that someone has to manage. One person has to be a constant on that Zoom as a communicator with the client. Okay, we're about ready to take, because you don't know when to pay attention sometimes. you know? So the communication there, it's a whole different level of communication. And if the director doesn't check in at the beginning of every setup, it's like, what are they doing? Where are they? What are they doing? You know?
Yeah.
Very true, because you're not seeing everything that you might see if you're like standing in the room on a shoot, and it's like, oh, can we try that? Or hey, that wall might be better than that wall or that angle.
Right.
So it actually has to happen more, I think, checking in.
Most definitely. Most definitely.
Yeah.
Are there any ground rules that you have, like any new ground rules to sort of establish how you want to communicate and how the process is going to go, or is it just sort of assumed?
Yeah, I mean, I think zooming out a bit, I think that's another thing. Like if I was to tell someone that was getting into the business or was young in the business, it's like, we talked about this yesterday, Melissa. It's like just listening to people and asking people, you know, there's no standard ground rule that covers everything. But if I was working with Melissa, it's like, okay, we're doing this shoot. How do you like to be communicated to on Zoom? You know, like, what are some of the things we need to do? Because no one is the same, you know, and we can offer like, here's what we've done that we found works, and she can offer like, here's what we found that doesn't work, and here's what we found that works. So it's really just listening and meeting people where they're at and and finding out what they want.
I love that. Listening, meeting people where they're at, and communicating. I love like this separate, on the one hand, one of the first things that came into my head, Melissa, was the potential for there to feel like it's like a back channel, but to have that safe space where people can say, hey, I'm not really feeling this right now. Am I the only one? Because man, you could save yourself. Two of my favorite people, Steve, there are three of us on the screen right here, so you better change that number to 3, like stat.
We can all guess what it means.
I totally crashed your discussion. So
no,
You didn't. You didn't, because and actually, Melissa, you're one of the people that I also wanted to talk to about this, just because I think about how creative juices would just, one of my favorite things, you know, back in my past when I worked in post-production, was to see the magic of what happened in an edit room, where people would come together and all of these ideas would be gelling, and it wouldn't necessarily be about just that project. It might also be about a future project. So like, I love the creative process, and so I'm curious what behaviors are happening now to keep that inspiration and to keep that cohesion and trust and juiciness.
It is really tough, and I do feel like, especially, so one of the best things about going into an edit suite, aside from the snacks, of course, was that like creatives that were at their desk or whatever could literally get out of the building, go down the street, go whatever, and sit with people that they don't talk to every day. And the fact that everything is so isolated just takes that away. And I feel like they're not able to create their own brand as much, or who they are in the room, and then who they are, you know, just their own confidence as a co-creator. And so I've tried, which is going to happen a little more, but just to try to get some of these folks to meet each other, not in the throes of a session, because
Right.
there's it's like virtually breaking bread a little bit. And it's been harder and harder because I think everyone is working longer hours and nobody needs another Zoom. And there have been like cocktail Zooms and this Zoom and very well intended sort of virtual events. You have to be very choiceful about it because people are kind of over, you know, and now that we can sort of peek out a little, it's good to create those other times when people can just get to know people and then they feel more comfortable, because it is very isolating to, you know, and try to give your opinion to somebody you've like never really talked to before.
Yeah. Well, how do you create a space for that? Like how do you create a space where the idea or the purpose is given, has space to breathe and people can align to it?
I think you kind of have to have I think you have to really make it a priority for the team to, to make sure you see their vision so that you're kind of all walking in the room and, even if it's a virtual room with like what your intentions are and that they're aligned and that they understand kind of they still need to understand the protocol in terms of like what you were saying, Scott, like so-and-so wants this, but I didn't talk to so-and-so. And so, because you've got, especially on the agency side, you have teams who feed up to other teams who feed up to leaders. So really also too, to get some consensus in sort of a less non-threatening or whatever setting to make sure everybody's spending their time wisely.
Yeah. Yeah. Scott, yesterday when we were talking, you were saying, everything just aligns around the idea, right? Like we've got the idea. This is how do you still, it's all about the idea and it's all about the work, but it's all about the people too. So how do you make that happen? How do you make that work?
I mean,
and Melissa, if you have to drop, let us know. Cause I know that
I'm like, looking at this presentation, I probably should, but thanks for letting me crash.
Yeah, thank you.
It's fun to actually have these have both of you on at the same time. But yeah, Melissa, thank you for making a cameo appearance on our show.
Of course. Well, now maybe I'll figure out how I can get off of it.
I think you can. I don't think I have to boot you out, but I think you can just. Maybe if you just close Instagram.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Or just slowly walk away. Just
slowly walk away.
Out of the room.
That's right. And I hope we get to like not virtually get together soon.
Oh, yes. I'd love to see your humanness.
You as well. Hey, Scott. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. And now we'll see how this, okay, now it looks like, are you seeing the circle-y thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
It looks like she's about to
She's in purgatory.
vaporize.
She's about to.
Instagram Instagram purgatory. But at least your head is, now I'm the one with the big ass head.
Yeah, I like this three-way split. This is nice. The idea thing is fun because it just like there's so much passion and emotion that goes into everything we do. There we go. Wow. That it's just a centering point to bring it back to like what was our initial intention, what was the core of that idea, like how do we get back to that, and that kind of cuts through all the bullshit if there is bullshit about like, well, I wanted to do this or I thought it should be this. Like, okay, and sometimes you got to try a few ways to do something, but ultimately, and in our business, lots of times it's we're serving someone else's idea. And other times we're serving our idea. And it's fun when we serve our idea, then we become the client and we joke like, oh my God, now we're doing what we hate, like we're overthinking this or whatever. And it's always a good laugh.
It's a good laugh to all of a sudden realize it's like that moment when you're like, oh my gosh, I'm acting like one of my parents.
Yeah,
right.
But it gives you empathy, it's like,
yes,
shit, this matters a lot. And now I know why we have to do 10 revisions of this.
So what do you think gets in the way of trust, of all of the ingredients that we talked about? We talked about trust, communication and deadlines, holding to an intention, cutting out the chatter. Like what gets in the way for you?
Well, communication can break down pretty easily. And sometimes you're moving so fast and you sometimes think that everyone knows how something's supposed to be. And maybe they do and you don't. But that thing where you have to say out loud what you want and what you think and what your intentions are. And sometimes I don't, I don't say it, and that's on me. So communication can break down. And sometimes people can misinterpret as well. And not just the idea or the way to, because there's several ways to get to something. And if you say, boy, we want this to be this style of humor, everyone has a slightly different take on that. But what I mean by miscommunicating is like sometimes people will say, I don't think they like what we're doing, like client-wise or whatever. It's like, well, do they or don't they? You know, let's see this. And you can't read it in an email. You can't. That's the problem. You can't read tone in an email or text. And sometimes even when someone's speaking to you, it's those very, very, very soft skills of interpreting. You know.
Right.
So sometimes you have to back up and say, okay, what were the actual words said? You know, and then try to interpret from there.
Well, that goes back to your comment about listening, like
Yeah.
really like deep listening, and then also double checking.
Yeah.
This is what I'm hearing, and that, and it almost, man, it sounds really rudimentary, but it seems like the faster the production is going, or the faster the tighter the deadline, the more important it is to slow down and keep checking back in to make sure that people are on the same page.
Yeah. And then there's that point of not checking in and letting people just get into like a flow state, you know, and just go, you know, just feel it. And then, but then at the end of the day, let me see what you did. Sort of thing, you know, just to check.
Right. Okay. Right. This makes sense. Okay. So what we're talking about here then is when you've got people that are holding their piece of the pie, right? So whether it's, you know, somebody working on an animation or an end title, and somebody else working on an edit, and somebody else plotting a shoot, like they're leaving them to do what they're there to do, and then having checkpoints.
Yeah, and just giving people space and not micromanaging it. It's hard to do sometimes. You know, you've had this probably, but sometimes if I feel like I can do something, I can't be halfway in. So I have to almost go all the way out, like, and just say, okay, go and just tell me when you're done. But if I were watching it, I'd want, you know, backseat driver problems. I can't have those, you know, I have to go away.
Yeah.
And the listening thing is really hard. I've always wanted to be one of those people. I'll say this, it's off topic, of course, but, you know, some people say, man, whoever, I can't think of a person, Jane Goodall. Boy, when you talk to her, it's like you're the only person in the room. You know, we're in a crowded place, but if I'm in a crowded room, my eyes are darting all over the place. Not because I'm bored with you and I'm looking for someone else better to talk to, but just because of the stimulation of there's all these people here. You know,
Yeah.
so the listening thing is that's a lifelong practice.
Well, you're not alone with that, Scott, because when we are giving somebody our attention, we have to tune out our own chorus that's in the background of our head. And I think that's one of the things that can kind of keep people from being really present and really providing all the attention, because in the background something is going on, right? Oh, is my lipstick shade too dark? Does my hair look stupid? Wait, what am I having for dinner? Wait, I'm a little thirsty. Should I have a sip? Like, we've got this running dialogue that's going on in the back of our head. So to tune that out and tune into somebody, first of all, it's a gift, because who wants to be in our heads? But secondly, it can be a little different. But Scott, if you don't mind, I'm going to tell you, when I have a conversation with you, I do feel like I'm the only person in the room.
Well, because now you are.
Because we kicked Melissa Barany out earlier.
Right. When she was here, I just kept looking at her. Well, that's nice to hear. Yeah, you don't know. It's hard to know yourself. It's kind of like this thing, like, oh, what are your 5 tips on teamwork? I don't know. I just I kind of live it intuitively, and it's hard to, like, I don't ever write it down. I've never thought about it. I guess I have thought about it, but I've never thought to write it down or remember.
Yeah. This is something that I notice you do really well, and I'm curious how you do it, which is creating opportunities for people to create, bring their values, bring their ideas to life. And I'm wondering where, if that is just natural in terms of how you are and how you lead, or if that is something that you've learned over time. But there's a sense that I have that you are a servant leader, and you create the space for people to make things happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you find the right people and they have passions and you can tell they want to do a certain thing, um, then why not let them do that and just be their support? So at Daily Planet specifically, give a shirt a little bit. Let's talk about Daily Planet first. We have to make money because we're a business. We want to do good work and we want to have fun. And maybe not in that order. I mean, the money thing's probably always first because we are a business. But other than that, it's like, what do you want to do? So if an animator says, boy, I'm way into this, even though it takes a long time and no one's asked for it, I'm way into this frame by frame animation in Photoshop. It's like, what do we need to do? Is there a program we need to buy? Do you need a little space to do it? Let's just do this. Let's explore it. It looks cool. And if their passion's there, like, lead with that. And then
Right.
a year later, if no one's asked for it, it's like, well, we got to focus on some other stuff, but this is super cool, or let's try to sell it. It's so much easier than telling someone what to do or what style to have. If someone already has the wind behind them, let's do it. And it's
Right.
when I was a kid, I just had so many different hobbies, and I was way into them, and then I dump them, and then I'd way into it, and then dump it. Beer cans, matchbooks, and I was like super into it, and then put it to the side and start something new. So that's fun, And Michael Gabriel's that way. Like, he's way into rocks. He's gone mining for rocks and crystals now. Like, he's just gotten super, super into that. And that's great. I mean, it's a joy that the world we live in, that somehow will come back, in
Right.
some way to what we do. It will be, and I think everyone can live that way. I think the artistic life isn't for people creating art. It's for creating life artistically, There's a way to approach every decision, and the creativity comes from, how do I do this? Do I need a new car? My car's broken down. What's the other options?
Right.
And not to get hung up on it.
Yeah. People always talk about when they're looking at teams and like how do you define success for a team? So given the fact that you're a creative operation, like, what does success look like for you? And how do you get your team to buy into success? What success looks like?
Yeah. Boy, oh boy. There's a lot of work we do that's nothing that you'd necessarily want to show someone, and you might be proud of the work because, boy, this was a challenge because of the time frame, or because of the budget, or because of the time frame and what we were given, because the creatives on the agency side or the corporation side didn't have time to prepare anything for us, and we made it work for them. We solved this problem, but it's nothing we necessarily want to share. Like, you go home for Christmas, what have you been working on? You don't put that up on the TV set. So we always joke that there's the amazing piece that moves people and changes the world and makes you a ton of cash, and you had total freedom on it. And not many people get all three of those things,
Right.
So you try to build space there. If someone's not bringing that to us, we make it ourselves, and we take the money we make from doing all these other things that are great, and we love to solve those problems. We love working with those people, and they make us money, and we funnel some of that money back into, let's make this cool piece, So we're making the cool piece. We're not necessarily making money on it. It's helping promote us, but we get to stretch, we get to play, And
Right.
sometimes we get to fail. It didn't work. It wasn't cool. We thought it was going to be cool. It wasn't. But it's important
Right.
to do that.
Well, and to your point earlier, those experiments then serve other clients, right? Because then, oh, wait a minute, you have this skill set now, and you can do X, Y, Z. This is what we're looking for on this next project. We want to try it, and you've
Right.
already tried it.
Right.
So,
Or they might say, like, I think we can do this in one day. The shoot in one day. It's like, boy, oh boy, we've done this. We did it in one day. We should have had 2 days. We should really push for 2 days on this.
yeah.
So it's kind of trying it out before it really counts.
Yeah. Well, what I'm hearing there is a lot of creative personal responsibility, right? We want to learn this thing. We want to make this thing. Okay. Well, let's do it. Let's make this.
Yeah.
Let's make this. So, okay, so far I've been kind of jotting down some notes on the ingredients of a successful creative team. Okay,
Yep.
so I'm going to throw some of these at you and then let me know what I've missed. Trust, number one. Clear communication and deadlines, because those can break down pretty easily. Having an intention and having everybody like be aware of that initial intention and or idea, purpose, that sort of thing. Listening and empathy, and creative personal responsibility.
Yep. I think.
What else? What else am I missing?
I think you need a pinch of patience and a heaping teaspoon of love. No.
Patience and love. No, I'm with you, Scott Marvel. Patience and love. Yes.
But the listening thing is important. Like when you're back to Melissa's point, when you're just sitting around and someone says, "Oh, did you see this? I just saw this weird film, or I just saw this great music video. How did they do this?" Like just to hear, to start to learn what sparks people, what really gets their juices flowing, you know. And if you're super lucky, then that all those things align, and the things that get your juices flowing are the things you're getting paid to do. That's a beautiful thing, you know.
Yeah. Well, and part of that I think is what kind of spawned Give a Shirt, because you got to, like, a lot of people cared about doing this other thing and were then able to like align around a different goal and create cool t-shirts and cool designs for t-shirts.
Yeah, there's so many designers that get to design for products all the time, but I knew they also maybe had a little side t-shirt side, or they did fun stuff for their friends on the during the holidays. So it's like, let's make art that can actually help someone. Let's make something that makes a difference in the world. So the funny thing was, the first year we did it, I just put it out there, like, just give me a cool t-shirt design, to all these different people, some of them full-time artists, some of them working in the ad world. And almost to a T, every single person working in the ad world asked for a theme. Like, do we do anything, or is there a theme? Because they're used to a brief. And it's just a kicking off point. They could go as wild as they want, and some did, but they needed that first step. So now we always have a theme, but some people just turn in whatever they want, as long as it's a cool shirt and it sells. That's all that matters. So yeah, that's been a lot of fun, and that's something I don't really curate. There's been a few times it's like, boy, we don't go political, let's not do that. But other than that, it's like, give me what you would wear on a t-shirt, what you would see on a t-shirt, or what you think your friends would see on a t-shirt, and that's all that matters.
Yeah. It's a cool thing. Well, I'm going to put links to make sure that Daily Planet and Give a Shirt are both linked out. We're going to start, you said that the deadline was the end of this month, which means that, like, pretty soon, when can we expect to see Give a Shirt designs out in the world?
They'll go live, I think, the Tuesday or Wednesday before Thanksgiving. All the new designs will. So
exciting.
Yeah. So we have a little more time, if hopefully none of the artists are listening, but there's a little more time than the end of the month, but we just like to be prepared.
No, clear deadlines and communication, so shit don't break down. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Thank you so much for taking some time to share with me, with people that are viewing, people that are interested in teamwork. It's funny, I specified that we're talking about creative teams, but ultimately, as you noted, everybody is a creative team because we're all solving problems in the world. So do you have anything else that you want to add before we sign off? And if anybody's watching and has a question, now is your time. But Scott, do you have anything to add before we go?
No, I don't think so.
You are complete.
Yeah, I'm complete.
Well, maybe when it's time to do your the unleash the new designs, we can chat again.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love that.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Scott. You have a great rest of your day, and thanks for everybody who joined us today.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.